and welcome to another episode of the USLAW Live podcast brought to you by USLAW's corporate partners. I am Pam Halford from Carr Allison, the Alabama firm. I'm located in Dothan, Alabama, where it is very hot, particularly if you don't happen to have air conditioning in your home. I am joined by two of my outstanding co-hosts. I will let them introduce themselves because no one wants to continue to hear me talk.
Hello, everyone. It's Jessica Dark from the Oklahoma City firm Pierce Couch, Hendrickson, Basinger, and Green. I'm excited to have another fun episode with our lovely hosts, and we have a great guest today. But who's my other co-host today?
And you've got Mike Judy from the Dysart Taylor firm in Kansas City, Missouri. Hello, Jessica. Hello, Pam.
How are you doing, Mike?
I am lovely. I am even more excited that we have a wonderful guest today, Doug Clarke from our Canadian firm in Quebec. And Doug, I do not speak any French, so I will let you tell everybody your firm name because I will just end up butchering it. But welcome, Doug.
Thanks to all three of you. It's a pleasure to be here. So the trick with French is when you see an R, you got to roll it. So the firm name in French is Therrien Couture Joli-Coeur. But if you say Therrien, everyone will understand what you're saying. So you can say Therrien Couture Joli-Coeur, and that's good as well.
And is that how you identify who can speak French and who can't, is how they say and or butcher your firm's name?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good indicator, and you can tell after the very first word or the very first last name, Therrien. So as soon as somebody says Therrien, they are from somewhere in French Canada, maybe from Louisiana and or from France or Belgium.
I mean, I did take 4 years of French, but I would never attempt this name in front of you, Doug. I, in law school, went to the Oxford Study Abroad program and went to Belgium one weekend and was so proud to use my excellent French skills to ask questions. And I think I did a good job because they would respond to me in French, and then I'd have to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I actually can't understand French being spoken back to me, apparently. Can you please explain with your fingers or use English?" It was embarrassing.
I will say this about Europeans is the most discouraging thing is we say, we respond to them or give them a few words in French or in Italian. They respond to us in their language, and then we say, sorry, don't speak that language. And then they will speak to you in very good English. And then you think, man, I should have paid more attention at those in high school. But I'm lucky for French in that Quebec, the area of Canada that I live in, is about 85 to 90% French. And
Is that where you were born and raised?
So I was born in here in Montreal, where so our firm we can call it TCJ. That will make it easy for everyone. So TCJ
Thank
has
goodness.
seven offices. All of them are in Quebec. There are 3 offices in the Montreal area. Montreal is the biggest city in Quebec. There's about 4.23 million people that live in Montreal, and in our firm, there's about 250 lawyers, and I would say people whose first language is English there's probably about 10 of us. Everyone else is French speaking, French Canadian. So I was born here in Montreal and then grew up in different areas of Canada, including Newfoundland, which if you've never been to Newfoundland, it's a fascinating place to go. It's very hard to understand the people that live there. They're sort of the descendants of Irish fishermen, and they have their own really special Canadian English dialect. And then when I was a kid, we lived in rural Ontario, and then we moved in 1976 to Sherbrooke, Quebec, which is the historical English part of Quebec, which is sort of right up along the border of northern Vermont and northern New York State, just within about an hour of Montreal. So most of the time I've been here, but I lived in a few other places in Canada as well.
Well, Pam and I and the entire Women's Connection of the US Law Network were in Quebec in, what was that, June, and that was my first time to Canada, and it was gorgeous. The weather was amazing, and TCJ was so kind to open up the office to us. We really, really appreciated that and had a blast in your country.
Well, we were glad to have you. And I mean, Quebec City is an amazing place. We go there usually with our family once a summer just because it's so cool. It's the European walled city is still there. It's the only walled city in North America, and you really feel like you've left sort of North America once you get into Quebec City. So it's a really neat place for sure. And we were super happy to have all of you there. The female attorneys that were at that event raved about it, loved it. So glad that on the US law side, it was mutual.
Yeah, it was great. And in fact, that's my second time to Quebec City. The first time was in 2019. Yeah, 2019. And we had a transportation forum there. And that was a standout US law event for me. And I have to believe that Quebec had a huge impact on what a standout event it was, but it goes down as the best event that I've ever been to with US law. So there's a special US law and Quebec place in my heart.
Well, that's I mean, I tell everybody, in particular Americans, that they should, if they get the chance, they should come to Quebec City because it's really kind of a unique experience in North America and in Canada. I mean, if you go to Toronto's a great city, but
Yeah.
Toronto's a big North American city. If you get dropped at, a corner of any street, you could be in Minneapolis or in
Yeah.
some other place. But if you get dropped on the corner in Quebec City, you will immediately know that you're in Quebec City because you could not be anywhere else in North
Right.
America. I mean, you could be in Charleston, but because of the geography, it's all sort of on a hill with that huge hotel. You know exactly where you are. But
Doug, tell us a little bit about your practice.
so my practice has sort of three, I would say, principal angles. The first part is mergers and acquisitions. The second part is general contractual review, and the last part is really sort of external general counsel work. So clients that just call me with whatever their problem is, and I have to fix it. And it could be employment, it could be regulatory, it could be, getting somebody's kid out of police custody. It can just be whatever the president and or the C-suite person who's calling me has an issue with. That's the problem of the day. I mean, which is kind of strange today because I started out as an insurance litigator doing insurance defense work, and I somehow, and during my articles, I did one corporate commercial, merger and an acquisition transaction, and I hated it. It was I thought it was the most. I mean, I remember looking at these minute books and leafing through them and thinking, oh my God, how do people do this for a living? Like I think, and
How many
and
years ago was that,
and
Doug?
that's what I do. That would have been circa 1999,
Uh-huh.
and
So that many years later, and here you are doing
that
it.
many years later, and I kind of I switched firms in 2006, and so I had basically been a litigator for about 6 years, and my practice was insurance defense, and then increasingly secured transactions, working for financing companies, insolvency, recovery of assets and stuff like that, and then I had some friends that were at a large national firm. Canada-wide firm, and they wanted somebody, and I was just at this position, in life where you kind of have these moments of introspection. Wasn't too sure at the firm. It was a smallish firm. The other firm was bigger. Wasn't sure how I was going to become a partner. And at the big firm, they had like a whole in fact, it was no simpler, but they just had they had a big binder that told you everything you had to do. So I looked at the binder, I was like, hey, that it seems much clearer to me. So I jumped ship and became sort of overnight. I shut down 160 open litigation cases, walked up 20, well, took the elevator 20 floors up in the same building and became an M&A attorney. Did not know what I was doing. Like day one, every single paralegal and every articling student knew more than me about what we were doing. But, fake it till you make it, as they say.
Wow.
And it turned out interestingly, because some people have asked me this over what is it about litigation that makes you a good commercial attorney or transactional attorney? And there were two things I learned as a litigator. One was to be a very good listener, because when you're in court and you're listening or you're doing an examination, you listen really hard to what the other people are saying. And that was one thing, a skill that I brought over into commercial negotiations and working with people, was really listening hard to what they're saying. And it helps you sort of go through and get to what is really important for the person, and that becomes the thing that you can negotiate around and or leverage into getting a better deal for your client, and a deal that the other party is going to want to make. And if you don't really listen to other people, it's hard to get to that position. So that, and the other thing that litigation gave me was a really broad knowledge base. So I had done all kinds of cases about all kinds of different things. I had done various types of cases. And so when I got thrown into the transactional end of the pool, it turns out that due diligence is really just knowing a lot of things about a lot of various topics. And so all of these folks that I was working alongside of, who had only ever done sort of one thing, transactional law, share purchase agreements and the diligence associated with it, they could line up all of the contracts in one category, but they couldn't tell you anything about them. So they couldn't tell you whether there was a problem with the employees in the corporation. They just looked at all the employment agreements, put them on a spreadsheet, and here they are. And so even from day one in those teams, I ended up in the sort of the second chair, because I could talk to the client about what are the relationships between, what's the lease, for example, what impact is created by the fact that the lease is coming due in 6 months, or there's some regulatory problem with how they hold the real estate, what's going on with the employees, have they had claims? So all of these different things, I could not only sort of organize them into categories, but I could talk to the client about what the potential impact was for their transaction. So that, it turned out, being a litigator is a really good way to, you acquire lots of skills that are crossover quite well into mergers and acquisitions, which it's a fairly rare. I haven't met very many people that sort of went cold turkey after 6 years and jumped ship, but I did.
Do you ever miss your litigation days?
I do, because it turns out that I would say the only thing for which I had a natural talent in this business is being able to sit in a room, listen to somebody tell a story, and then listen to somebody else tell the story 2 days later and be able to say, no, that's not right. 2 days ago, somebody said, this other thing. And I'm really good at that. And I rarely get to exercise that talent these days. The other talent I have is not needing a lot of sleep, and that's very good for M&A transactions at the end, because oftentimes they sort of come down to this crunch time. So I can go a week or two with 4 hours sleep a night and still be functional. But I don't.
No, thank you. One day of 4 hours of sleep, and nobody wants to be anywhere near me.
Yeah, it would take me weeks to recover from one day.
I will say it takes me longer to recover now than it did it did earlier in my career, but yeah, I can keep going like the Energizer Bunny, just sort of banging away at the keyboard on the screen. Which, again, we're at a small size firm. For when I started this firm, there were 15 attorneys. And while I was negotiating with them, it moved to about 22, 23. Today, there are 250 of us. But oftentimes on the other side of the table, we've got massive US firms with thousands of lawyers, and they can throw people at you 24 hours a day, basically. And so not needing a lot of sleep for short periods of time is an advantage.
Are
Now,
you
is
heavily
that all? Oh,
caffeinated?
gotcha. Yeah, that's what I was going to
I
ask.
don't. I need one good cup of coffee in the morning. I will skip coffee if it's not good enough.
What's good?
Uh,
Wait. What's good, Doug? What are we going for here?
well, so I need
A French press?
a, I'll take a French press, sure. Good quality is the most, and it has to be very strong. So usually I have a double espresso recipe here that I use at our machine, but at home we have an espresso machine and Italian coffee. My wife's Italian, and so one good cup of coffee in the morning, and I'm good.
Wow.
I don't need
Hmm.
4 or 5 of them during the rest of the day.
I'm operating on about 2 cups of what my husband will tell you is gross coffee. It's just, little K cups that you get on Amazon. And then I move straight to iced tea for lunch. And then I move straight to some wine or beer when I get home. And I am perpetually dehydrated.
Yeah, you
Well,
need to throw some water in there,
Yeah,
Jessica.
follow me for some more healthy tips.
that's right.
This morning,
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out. I like to add a little bit of milk to my coffee, just a little splash. And I couldn't figure out why my coffee tasted bad this morning. I was like, wow, this is unusual. And I'm trying to get my daughter to school. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off in a very, very hot house. And I get to the office and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a new cup. So I poured it down the drain. Chunks of
oh.
milk
Oh,
came
Pam.
out down the drain. It was so gross.
Yeah, I was
Oh.
gonna say maybe it's not just the air conditioning that's not working at your place, but
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
well, and I think, as you try and get healthier, you people won't see it in the podcast, but I have a bottle of water here, which I should be drinking, and I opened it earlier on, and it smells like swamp water, which means I haven't been drinking. It's been there for a few days,
Been
so
there for a while.
I need to go. But yeah,
uh,
I'm not a good hydrator either. I need to be better at that for sure.
so does your work take you, are you working all over Canada? I guess how does it work? Like in the States, you're licensed in one state. In
Yeah.
Canada, are you free to work in the whole country, or is it each
Can
province, or how's that work?
Yeah, Canada works like the United States in that sense. You're licensed to practice by province, and then if you are over a certain um, length of bar, you can sub into different provinces for litigation purposes. But our firm and I have a civil law degree. The other thing we should say is Quebec is a civil law jurisdiction. Our um, civil law is based on a civil code that's directly imported from the Napoleonic Code in France, and we use federal jurisdiction covers, criminal law, copyright, communications law, and there are various sort of federal statutes that cover all of Canada and supersede provincial law. But and then the rest of Canada is common law, British-based sort of, and then reinterpreted going back to Canadian independence, so similar to the U.S. in the way it functions, although there are some distinctions. But Quebec is different in that regard. So our firm, we're licensed. The lawyers here are generally licensed to practice in the province of Quebec. Some people are licensed to practice in other provinces. I have a common law degree, but I did not get licensed to practice in Ontario, for example, which is the province next door. But that same degree would allow me to go and write the New York State Bar if I wanted and get licensed, in the U.S.,
Gotcha.
which I was considering at one point, and then I had kids and sort of the dream of taking a suitcase and traveling to practice. I was going to say
Kids
died, but
always dash your
yeah, I just
dreams.
kind of
I know.
we put down roots and we haven't moved anywhere. Although I many years ago I interviewed with an English law firm, and when I came back from the first interview, my wife was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then when I got the second interview, I got the distinct feeling she did not want to move to the UK. So that was the end of that adventure. But yeah, and just to go back to your original question, how does it work? So we use US law. I mean, two things. Canada is most of the population of Canada is along 100-mile strip of land that's north of the US border. So 85% of the population lives within like a 2-hour drive of the US. And what that does is a lot of Canadian trade flows north-south. And so Canadian attorneys, in particular commercial transactional attorneys, do a lot of international work in the sense that our clients are buying and selling things into and from the US. So, which means that you end up having to learn how to operate outside of your own jurisdiction, and we do that in two ways. One is to become familiar with the principal jurisdictions in which our clients are doing business, sort of the big picture, and then to reach out to affiliated firms that can help give us that local, rubber. I was going to say rubber stamp, but that's not all the right word. That local approval, confirmation, and detail about what's going on. So, and I'll give you an example. I have a client that bought a company in North Carolina a month ago. We used the local U.S. law firm. They're Poyner Spruill. They did a fantastic job working with us. So we piloted the high-level business terms in the purchase agreement. The folks at Poyner Spruill reviewed that documentation and said, yeah, okay, this is good for, in terms of having the proper effect in North Carolina. And then we were, as part of the transaction, buying a plant and 175 employees in that plant. And so Poyner took the lead on making sure that all of the employment law issues related to the transfer over of those employees were properly managed. And we told them what we wanted, and also explained back to our clients what Poyner was telling us about U.S., North Carolina employment law, so environmental law, all kinds of different elements. So we really tend to work across borders, but we don't pretend to, and obviously we don't give legal advice in other places other than in the jurisdiction in which we're licensed to do that. But we work with our network affiliated firms to make sure that our client gets the exactly what they want, the best advice that money can buy, which comes from U.S. law, of course. And
I like the shameless plug. Good work.
well, I mean, value for money, I have to say.
Yeah.
We get our client was blown away by, and I'll say this without naming the firm. The firm on the other side was a very good firm, great firm. They did a good job. Their client was an English public company, and no complaints at all. Super collaborative. But then our client saw their fee, and then quickly emailed me to say, "Can you just check to see how much this is going to cost us?" So I wrote to the partner at Poyner, and he got back to us, and we were doing about the same level of work, and our fees were within $5,000 of each other. Exactly, sort of same level, super reasonable. And the client got, exactly, similar service level, similar, equal quality of product. And then at a price that they found in the end was much less than they expected, having seen what was being paid on the other side. So all that to
Right.
say, I mean, we use, because again, going back to, Canadian business and representing Canadian businesses in the US, I think we've used every single firm in US law in the continental United States. And we always, we always get great service. And for us, the coverage of US law is really the principal driver. A lot of networks have, firms in the big commercial centers. So you've got a firm in, in New York and LA and Chicago, Atlanta, Miami. But if you go to Kansas City, or if you go to, a smaller jurisdiction, somewhere in the Midwest, for example, or somewhere in the Northeast or the Southwest, you end up in a referral situation with people you don't know. And the
Right.
great thing about US law is people call me and they say, "Oh, can I get a lawyer in Tennessee?" And I'll say, "I'll give you this person who I know personally, and I'll get them on the phone right now. We'll have a conversation." And it creates a different level of confidence on the part of the client to know that, this is not just somebody who's in my Rolodex and who I saw 3 years ago,
Right.
somewhere. This is somebody who I can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, so and so, you know, small talk. How's your boy doing in his soccer? Oh, he's doing great." And so, I mean, all of this contributes from our perspective to the confidence that our clients have. And it's to the point where we get, because as you know, U.S. law is connected to TELFA, which is the Trans-European Law Firm Association, and so I'm the representative of the U.S. Law Board to that organization, and so I'm always talking to those folks about, when you're going to the U.S., you know, call us, call the network, call Roger, call me, and we'll get you to the people in the state where you're doing business. Don't, accept a secondhand referral. We get great. So I get calls from Italian lawyers telling me, "Here's my problem. Who should I call?" And then, so break it down with them. What's the issue? Where are people located? And here's the person you should call. And sometimes I'll be on the phone and I'll say, "Okay, this is who you should speak to. You and let me call them on my cell phone on the other line. So, hey, so and so, are you available to pick up a call from somebody?" "Sure, no problem." Hang up, call this person at this number, and they'll hook you up. And
Right.
and I think you can get that from all kinds of people in U.S. law, and it's because people really do know each other, and they're not, it's not fake in the sense of, my partners are always amazed kind of at the relationship level that the folks that are in U.S. law develop over the years, which, is just, for me, a unique type of relationship.
Yeah, and I think beyond the relationships too, one of the things that makes sort of selling these referrals within the network to the clients a bit is the fact that we have such a robust vetting process. To become a U.S. law firm is no small feat. And so not only am I able to say, this is my great friend Mike who practices in Kansas City, you also know that him and his firm have been vetted and they provide the highest degree of legal services that can be offered. So I think it's sort of a twofold thing that you've got going within the network, where you have these lawyers and the firms that have been vetted so well, and then also the relationships to back that up. And so it does feel, to your point, I feel super confident making those referrals
Yeah.
within the network, and it's a unique experience that we have here at
Yeah, and I would say, nothing is ever perfect, but the times where there's been an issue, I've been able to call somebody right away and, issue fixed. And so,
Yep.
and that's part of the other thing is that, just to that level of comfort that we have with people is to say, hey, something just went wrong here. I'm just letting you know we need to fix this for my client. And people are always, they'll bend over backwards. And it happens, a call gets dropped, an email doesn't get returned or something. But I've always had super responsive, pick up to those kinds of things that just happen and we're all busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Doug, we appreciate you being on the podcast with us. We had a great conversation
You
with
are our
you.
very first international guest, Doug.
Yes.
Does Canada really count as international? I mean,
I had to have a
it's
passport, and the people at security grilled me to enter your
really,
country. So yes, Doug, I think so. Yeah, they were very confused at why I was there. Not confused, but they asked a lot of questions to find out more information. And they're like, "Are you here for?" I was like, "I'm here for a conference." And like, "What kind of conference?" I was like, "A women's conference." And I was like, "How did you find out about this conference?" I was like, well, I'm a
it's
part of
on
this
the internet.
network.
You can put it. I can send you to the address. I mean,
It's on the internet.
Yeah.
I
I
was like,
think
I'm
we
going to
need
a
a
firm, but I couldn't think of the name, and I definitely couldn't pronounce it in the moment, and I got all sweaty.
that's so that happened to me one time. My wife would hate me for telling the story, but I was flying back from Austin and I slept on the plane. I got off the plane and I'm coming back into my own country. They asked me where I've been, couldn't remember. So
Oh gosh.
and we had I think there was a layover. So maybe it was from Chicago, and then I was like, we came from Chicago, and but before we were, and I just had one of those, sort of, I'm not awake completely yet. And then I got a bunch of subsequent questions about where do I live, what's my job, and then meanwhile, my wife was just like, "Oh my God, you can't remember where we were
That's
24
true.
hours ago." But
Oh.
they fortunately they let me in, and I have to say, there's all kinds of. I've never had. That's not true. I had one time I had trouble crossing the border into the U.S. because I had taken one of those treadmill tests, and they shoot you up with iodine, which I did not know
Yeah.
contains sort of trace radioactive elements, so they can see.
Ah.
And and in case you don't know, the guys have these monitors on them, and if you walk up to them and you're giving off radioactive isotopes, it starts to beep. So this guy's beeper went off, and the guy behind him stands up. Nobody moved, and then he's going around, and they asked me if I had any medical tests, and in my mind, the treadmill thing was, oh no, if I had had a medical procedure, and I said no, because procedure for me was sort of intervention, and if he had said test, I would have said yeah, I had a test. I said no, and so the guy's walking around with this Geiger counter, pointing it at everybody, and he comes back to me and it's like, so. Sir, please step up. So I got taken into that huge room that you never know. And at the back of the customs, and I'm sitting there all by myself. And this guy comes, and I go to stand up, sort of out of politeness, stay seated, sir. And he puts this massive, sort of rectangular box on a chair in front of me, and walks away. Comes back about 10 minutes later, and then he says, "Yeah, you're pretty hot." And I said, "Hey, thanks, but no." So he says, and then he just walks away again. And then he came back, and then he said, "Did you have any type of medical intervention?" And I said, "Yeah, I had this treadmill test." And he said, "Yeah, do you know what they gave you?" And I did not know. And he said, "So for future reference, if you ever do that and take the plane, you need to tell somebody when you come up to the counter, you need to tell them that you had this test. You need to show them what type of isotope you took and all this stuff." So it was, other than that, I've never had trouble getting into the U.S. and so it goes quite well. So I'm sorry, Jessica, that we grilled you, but hopefully now that you've been vetted, next time you'll just breeze right through.
It was a cautionary tale, a learning experience, but we really appreciate you taking the time to get with us today, Doug. It was
Yeah.
wonderful to learn about your practice and about how things work in our neighbor up north. And
Pleasure.
for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of US Law Live, the official podcast of the US Law Network. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to US Law Live. Stay tuned for more great conversations on US Law Live. To learn more about US Law Network, visit uslaw.org. Thank you.